We must prohibit usury, and we must force young Jewish girls and boys to work. Why? Because Arbeit macht frei. Last I checked. Let's have a quick look at that. You see, just bring this up. You see, so we must put young Jewish boys and girls to work because Arbeit macht frei. I wonder where Martin Luther, well, I'm sorry, I wonder where Adolf Hitler got that idea. One has to wonder, one has to wonder if Adolf Hitler got this idea somewhere. Hard to tell, hard to tell. Really, really difficult to tell the source. So let me see. Indeed, thanks for telling me this important story. So, why is Martino sounding like Muhammad? This is disturbing. Yes, the Pact of Umar 2.0. This guy sounds like an authoritarian tyrant. He was an authoritarian tyrant. That was again people claiming Jesus talks to them directly and they know better. No, he literally said that. Jesus, his words were the words of Jesus. Words of Jesus coming right out of his mouth. That was the story. Almost impossible to create a doctrine of resurrection from the Old Testament without the Deuteros. Yeah, this is surely why Paul caused so many riots in synagogues by his preaching. Interesting point. So this is basically Kristallnacht. Exactly. Kristallnacht was celebrated, was a celebration of Martin Luther's birthday. Was he a closet Muslim? Was the same toxic idea adopted by, I don't know if he was a closet Muslim. I think he was a closet mystic. I think he was a closet totalitarian freak. He was almost certainly, there's a chance he was the head of at least potentially 2 secret societies. So he was almost certainly a Gnostic in a real sense, a Manichaean style Gnostic. So yeah. So let me see. So Luther wanted to burn synagogues, burn them all to the ground, break into and destroy their houses, take away their prayer books, forbid the rabbis to teach, abolish their escort and ban them from traveling, prohibit them lending money, and force young Jewish boys and girls to work, which labor camps, everyone. Luther viewed Jews as a heavy burden to Germans in their country, like a plague, pestilence, and nothing but misfortune. He passed away only 3 years after writing his violently anti-Semitic text. Remember, his very last sermon, which for some reason no record is of it, but there were notes that mentioned things he said, but no one wrote a transcript of it. He stated, "We should have killed them all." Right? He wanted the genocide of the Jews. 4 days before his passing, he gave one last sermon. It was against the Jews. So Martin Luther's last sermon was against the Jews. Luther's hatred for the Jews was taken to an unprecedented level. His texts were so violent and vulgar that they offended contemporaries and remain offensive to this day. I will discuss this topic at length when I get into my Martin Luther series, okay? When I will be discussing and providing more evidence on this. This powerful, deep-seated loathing towards Jews has been uncharacteristically virulent to Germany. It flourished again in the 1900s with Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, who greatly admired Martin Luther and his anti-Semitic views. Now, this guy wrote some really good stuff. Mark Edwards, Luther's Last Battles, Politics and Polemics. That's some brilliant work this guy did. Not a Catholic as well, just so by the way. Luther was an undercover Mohammedan. Yeah, in a real sense, yeah. Secret societies and intentional international lodges that spread to the Arab lands too. Now, yeah, so perhaps the origins of the Freemasonry network, yeah. So I was talking about the Rhineland massacres that happened at the start of the First Crusades. People claiming directly talking with Jesus. Now, Martin Luther and Calvin all claimed the same thing. So Protz would say Luther became senile. Yeah, whatever. So, the life of Hitler. So, the art of leadership consists in consolidating the attention of the people against a single adversary and taking care that nothing will split up that attention. Adolf Hitler, well, Martin Luther focused everyone's attention and hatred on the Jews and made sure that nothing took away from that attention. Because if Adolf Hitler said it, then, it's Christian, right? Because Martin Luther did it. And I see lots of Protestants, don't lie to me, I've seen lots of Protestants defend Martin Luther and make very similar claims. Unlike Martin Luther, there is ample information available on Adolf Hitler's childhood and adult life. Okay, he was German Bavarian by blood, and he was Austrian only by borders. He was born in the little city on the Inn, as Hitler called it, all right, of Braunau am Inn. And he says it was German Bavarian by blood and Austrian only by borders. So technically, he felt he was German. Okay, was it neurosyphilis? Now, yes, Martin Luther very likely did suffer from syphilis. Martin Luther was a very sickly man, and I have discussed, and I will discuss again, But remember, he writes to his wife in one letter that he was no longer getting aroused by staring at prostitutes, and he blamed the Jews for his illness. Okay, so hold on. Martin Luther's not getting turned on by the sight of prostitutes. What is he up to, and why is he telling his wife that? Fine and well, but we'll discuss again in the future. So now, in addition, Hitler had an inability to fit in and follow any will but his own. An uncertainty of his personal future nevertheless depressed Adolf Hitler. And then things change. According to Mein Kampf, My Jihad, okay? After considerable research and discussion, Hitler recognized the Jew as the leader of the social democracy, the Marxists. And that is when the blinders fell from our eyes. Suddenly a long spiritual struggle came to an end. Yes, Martin Luther said that. Okay, I've discussed it many times on this channel. I've discussed it. I've showed the resources plenty of times on my channel. I will be doing it again. We'll be doing a whole lovely discussion of Martin Luther and why he's a great Christian and why we should all follow him. Okay, so once Adolf Hitler discovered that the Jews are responsible for everything, and the Jews, we have to hate the Jews because the Jews are responsible for everything that's wrong in the world, which is exactly the very same thing that Muhammad and the Muslims say, and Hitler said it, and Martin Luther said it. That makes it all very Christian. Of course, it's incredibly Christian because Luther said it, and Hitler said it, and Muhammad said it, so it has to be right, I think. Okay, so a life of politics as leader of the National Socialist Party would eventually give Hitler the power to confront the so-called Jewish problem head on. Right? So, Hitler, Germany will either be a world power or will not be at all. Adolf Hitler. So he believed that Austria must return to the great German mother country, not for economic reasons, but because common blood belongs in one common realm. So very nationalistic. Right? The reunification of the German countries and the greatness of Germany became Hitler's lifelong goal. In his manifesto, My Jihad, Hitler declares that as a boy and young man, he often wished he could demonstrate that my nationalistic enthusiasm was no empty obsession. His intense nationalism and hatred for non-Aryan people were the catalysts. We'll be discussing as well when I get to Luther of how under Luther, Germany eventually became a place where they hated anyone that wasn't one of them.